So there's been some interest from some people about uniting the right as a whole, but realistically, can this be done? So looking at a new poll, the figures were interesting. Reform is around 25-27%, Labour mid-20s, Conservatives low 20s, Lib Dems in the low teens. The right-wing voting bloc as a whole takes up nearly 50% if you believe in polls. It's too fractured for any one party to really pull ahead right now and guarantee success at the ballot box in the next general election. People who are trumpeting reforms slight lead in the polls, that's great, but that can disappear with a slow Labour comeback over the next few years. Now, I know that's unlikely with what's happened, but anything is possible in politics. Again, as well as polls being quite unreliable. So how could the right pull things together? It would be more beneficial to have one party with that nearly 50% of the vote share. It would give that party a huge amount of seats. I mean, an absolute avalanche, bigger than the last election, gains by Labour. With that advantage, you could really make meaningful change and get all the legislation required to turn this country around, put things right. But this is an unlikely scenario for many reasons. I mean, whilst some Reform and Tories overlap on some things, like small c conservative values, small government, meritocracy, individual freedoms and rights, if you dig a little deeper, there are really consistent ideological splits, especially in the broader right-wing coalition inside the Tory party. Pro-Europe or Europe skeptic, for starters. Things that some like to call the culture wars is another. And there are some Tories who sound more like Lib Dems, and that's according to people like Liz Truss, who was a Lib Dem, but who grew out of that to be very conservative. Then you have the pro-deportation side of Reform, which are the low followers, and the more moderate stance of most of the Farage side. So no political party has mass general consensus on every subject. But the right could learn something from the left here. I mean, look at Labour. It has a very left-wing section, the Corbynistas, the left-wing socialist lot, and then the centre-left, that Starmer's corralled nearer the middle ground to gain as many votes as possible. The left has a broad spectrum of opinion with some shared common values, and you can see that again in the Democratic Party across the pond. You have very, very left-wing people, more kind of left-wing, normal sort of left-wing types, and then the kind of more left-wing centrists. Over here, Labour's never really held that together that well until recent years. Sure, there's splits and cracks, but they did what they needed to do for their greater good to get Conservatives out, and could the right take a leaf out of their page and do the same? I mean, it could be the sensible thing to do would be to have something similar but different to what Reform are doing. You could be stronger on immigration and deportation, actually seek to reform root and branch all of government by taking entire acts to departments, quangos, getting rid of the House of Lords, looking at changing and scrapping, if necessary, the parliamentary structure, move power outside of London. I mean, there's far too many MPs. They don't really represent local interests as such. I mean, that is why we have local elections and councillors. There's many ways of shaking up the political system, and I'm, for one, I'm open to ideas. But in terms of a new party, I feel that party would have to, by necessity, get some MPs from other parties to give them a leg up. There are Tories who are far more aligned with Reform, Andrew Bridgen, for example. You could try to persuade them to come across, maybe. I mean, there's some criticism of Reform adopting this approach. I think it's more important the ideology is the same rather than the background, though this should be thoroughly examined before you do this, as to be a bit more discerning, because what you don't want to do is alienate your core voter base by bringing in people that you might not agree with, or they might not agree with. The alternative is to keep with Reform, stick with them, and concede it's better than another Labour term, which we all know would be disastrous, or keep an eye on the Conservatives, which is not ideal, given that they are still a long way from the party they were. You have the memories of Bojo, the COVID thing, the Brexit, all the broken promises, etc., etc. They still linger, and it might take a long time before they can be considered as a party worth backing, really. I mean, Kenny Badenoch is virtually a DI hire for some. She is a middle ground type of politician who doesn't seem to have the right political instincts, the credentials, nor ideology to bring the Conservatives in from the cold. Robert Jenrick talks a better game, but get him off his well-planned talking points, and I've seen him absolutely flounder in interviews. So until they can uncover someone far more solid, who can sort out that side of the Conservatives who are Conservatives in name only, Rory Stewart being a prime example of a lefty Conservative, they're not really an option. And then you have things like UKIP, but I don't feel they'd be an option, mostly due to the name and what comes with the history of the name. The falling out, especially in the Farage time, the infighting. Don't think they could garner support from the more moderate people on the right. Especially as their leader Nick Tanconi appears to be trying to place them as more of a Christian principle-led movement. That won't resonate with the mostly secular English society we have nowadays, though he's on a par with Rupert Lowe concerning migration, though that seems to be their biggest pull factor. He himself is not someone that anyone really sees as a future leader of a country. Outside of this, there's a few very fringe parties that really aren't worth mentioning, except Reclaim maybe, who have a little recognition, but they're not a serious party. Maybe the SDP, Social Democratic Party, but they've got a brand problem. So although they're culturally right, the name suggests otherwise, and they just would be wise to rebrand, as most people A, don't know who they are, and B, the name is really off-putting to most. I mean, Social Democrat, not going to win over a lot of people, is it? Although a few people are very behind parties like that, they'll never get as much support as other parties mentioned, so obviously not really much of an option there. Could someone or something merge these fringe parties in some way and bring them into a larger party? Is there enough time for a new party to emerge from the recent fiasco with some big former Reform players into the mix? There's certainly been some rumours of something happening, but they have to act fast and decisively. Maybe it's a good thing, and it could lead to some kind of pact with other parties in future, who knows? But at this point, there's everything to play for.